medical clinical assisting, political science and government. That's yours, right? Biology and English language and literature. And to give you an idea that every single one of these ones, a majority, 52% or higher, said that they regretted the degrees that they actually took.
I am the 56%. For political
87% said they regretted journalism, 72% sociology, 72% liberal arts and general studies. You know, it's interesting, more and more they're seeing more people say that they regret computer science as well, which seems ridiculous until you realize that if they just got a very generalized degree, it's not specialized enough to actually give them an advantage within the marketplace. And again, this goes into all of the bloat within a lot of these degrees. You weren't paying for all the stuff that you needed to be a really good biologist. You were paying for a whole host of stuff that had nothing to do with what you actually needed to be effective and marketable within that skill set. Now, again, you can make the argument, well, it's all part of a general educational experience. That works as long as that general educational experience still produces something that's market worthy. If it doesn't, then you're going to have to give up somewhere. And I got news for you. If all you're creating is really good activists who happen to know something about biology, that's going to make it even harder for them to get a degree, harder for them to get a job. Let's look at the next one. This is the one, I've been waiting to get to this one. This is the 13 most ridiculous college courses. All right. So if you go to Skidmore College, what an appropriate name. You can you can take a class on the sociology of Miley Cyrus. College students can learn about the media frenzy surrounding Miley and her transformation into a public figure and musician. It is disheartening to know that there's a distinct possibility that students will be writing twerk in actual academic papers. Scroll down. What's another one? Breaking Down Breaking Bad. That's SNUY Buffalo. Yes, there is a college course about Breaking Bad. The course examines key plot points in the AMC drama and the features guest speakers from the Drug Enforcement Administration and more. Number 3, what if Harry Potter is real? Appalachian State University. How can fantasy reshape how we look at history? Students in this class use historical imagination to look at the Harry Potter series, geography, real and imagined, historical events of the novel, and worldwide reactions to this famous book series. Number 4, Demystifying the Hipster, Tufts University. Students in this course cover some vital academic material, the definitions, debates, and history of the hipster. Number 5, Feminist Perspectives, Politicizing Beyonce. Rutgers University. Again, we're not talking about like some backwater, private Rutgers University. Beyonce is considered queen on many college campuses, and this class is no exception. By pairing the pop star's songs and music videos with writers like Sojourner Truth and Alice Walker, students attempt to answer the question, can Beyonce's music be seen as a blueprint for progressive social change? Number 6, Game of Thrones.
Oh, I have a...
And this is in my backyard, University of Virginia.
I should take that one. I would ace it. I've got a really quick story for you. When I went to England, one of the castles that I got to see, it's probably my favorite aspect of the trip other than the graduation itself where I got my master's, was when I went to see Warwick Castle in the middle of England. And Warwick Castle is like one of the most well-preserved castles in England. Warwick Castle was the home of two of the most famous lords in English history, and one of them was Richard Neville. Richard Neville played a critical role in the Wars of the Roses, so much so that he ended up getting the nickname the Kingmaker because he was responsible for deposing and bringing to the throne two separate kings, Henry VI and Edward IV. Well, Neville is actually the inspiration for Walder Frey. Wow! So I thought that was just a really funny.
It wasn't, but thank you. Okay. All right, number 7, tree climbing from Cornell University. Actually, this is the first one I've looked at where it's like, okay, that actually might be a marketable skill if you wanted to get into that industry. Number 8, you can take a class on stupidity from Occidental College. Students in this course learn to accept the normalcy of stupidity and are taught that it is the double of intelligence rather than its opposite. How fascinating that there is a college course on stupidity where students learn to accept the normalcy of it. That seems strangely appropriate. All right, scroll down some more. What are a couple more of these? 9, surviving the coming zombie apocalypse, disasters, catastrophes, and human behavior at Michigan State University. Again, I'm going to give them a pass on that one because of higher ed. Right, this is one of those, you remember when Jon Stewart said, we owe a great debt of science for helping to solve a problem that science probably created when he was talking about a certain nondescript flu coming out of China. Surviving the Coming Zombie Apocalypse at Michigan State University. This might be a course that we owe a huge debt of gratitude in order to help us survive something that the university system helped cause.
I remember the quote, the arc of history is long,
yeah,
but it bends towards zombie apocalypse.
Number 10, The Art of Walking by Centre College. You may think there's nothing more to walking than putting one foot in front of the other, but Professor Ken Keffer would disagree. He instructs students in the art and experience of walking, more specifically observing the world so that you'll never be bored while taking a walk. This is something that if you've taken out a second mortgage to send your kids to Centre College. Number 11, Philosophy and Star Trek at Georgetown University. Again, those are not cheap courses. How to Watch Television, Montclair College. Number 13, Oh, Look a Chicken, Embracing Distraction as a Way of Knowing, Belmont University.
Wow.
I will say that's another one that is strangely appropriate given what we're talking about here today. So these are some of the most ridiculous courses that you can take. Go ahead and look at the next article because I want you to understand that it doesn't stop there. All right. Top American universities, including Harvard and Yale, accused of peddling woke hysteria by charging thousands of dollars for politically charged diversity, equity, and inclusion courses that are run by activists. Harvard charges $12,400 for an online DEI course, and Penn's is nearly $10,000. Courses cover ideas like microaggression, unconscious bias, and privilege. Critics told DailyMail.com such courses are really run by activists rather than truth-seeking academics, and institutions are cashing out on woke hysteria. No kidding. You don't say. What's the next article? There you go. All right, this one. Scroll up a little bit. Okay, yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about. So again, just remember that the universities that are coming to me as a legislator begging for more of your tax dollars, that they're just, Delegate Freitas, if we want to keep tuition affordable for our school on the art of walking, right, for our classes on Game of Thrones at University of Virginia, we're going to need the taxpayers to pony up hundreds of millions of dollars. Keep in mind, like the budget in the Virginia budget that I voted no on had hundreds of millions of dollars for higher education in there. All right. 15 universities with the biggest endowments. All right. That means the amount of money that they're just sitting there collecting interest that, that they can use to help run operations, everything else. Harvard University, $50 billion. Yale University, $41 billion. Stanford University, $36 billion. Princeton University, $35 billion. MIT, $24 billion. University of Pennsylvania, $20 billion. Texas A&M, $17 billion. University of Notre Dame, $17 billion. University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, $17 billion. Duke University, $12 billion. Washington University in St. Louis, $12 billion. Emory University, $11 billion. Vanderbilt University, $10 billion. University of Virginia, $9 billion. Cornell University, $9 billion. I want you to remember this the next time you hear about those poor universities and how we need to invest more in higher education, because those endowments largely came from donors. Okay, so understand something. If maybe you went to a university and maybe you're very, very proud of that university and its alma mater, maybe you're very proud of the experience that you had when you went there. Maybe you think that the education that you received was just spot on, and maybe you met your wife there and it has special emotional, feelings for you as well. That's all fine and good. If you're not paying attention to what the university you attended to is actually doing with its students today, and you're still just giving them hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars for their endowments or for new facilities or for new buildings, and you're not asking very important questions about how they're spending the money or how they're using it or what they're actually teaching, you're part of the problem. And I'm sorry to put it that way, but it's true. One of the biggest issues that we have right now is it's not even all the public funds that get taken from people and sent to these universities. It's people that are privately donating these universities. I got to ask the question, because if you're someone that you got out of that university and you started a business, or you really hit it big by working, they are teaching the kids that they send there that you're the bad guy. They will sit there and gladly take your money with a smile on their face and then teach their students that you're the enemy and you're an oppressor and you need to be taken out. Just keep that in mind before you write one more check to them as alumni. Last thing I want to say, that's some of the most ridiculous stuff that I find frustrating, but I really want to get next into some of the things that we're actually seeing on these campuses. Go ahead. I want you to skip ahead a couple of articles here. In fact, the one I want to go to, Hamilton, is this one. It was the last one on the line there, I think. Take a look at that one. No, not that one. Sorry. We'll find it here. Here we go. American universities have finally hit the wall. Let's hope so. Higher education faces a real existential danger and recent outrage. Is this the moment of reckoning for academia finally at hand? Go ahead and scroll down because I want to talk about some of the things that this article addresses. The ground is still shifting rapidly beneath the elite universities. Once generous donors have rescinded almost $1 billion in donations, and this may be only the beginning after the disastrous performance of several Ivy League presidents in a recent congressional hearing. The University of Pennsylvania's president, Liz McGill, has already been forced to resign, and Harvard's Claude Gay, who is facing charges of plagiarism, is likely, they said likely next. She didn't. She's staying on. The House Committee on Education and the Workforce has announced a full investigation of Harvard, MIT, and UPenn, which could expand to other schools. It seems that disgust with elite universities is felt almost universally as everyone from billionaire hedge funders like Bill Ackman to grandstanding politicians to Elon Musk pile on. But it is important to remember that the most significant problems with academia have existed for decades and permeate nearly all universities, elite or not, in the U.S. The recent extreme political zealotry of Ivy League campuses should be no surprise to anyone who has spent even a modicum of time at one of these schools, much less so if one has attended a class there. The only surprise in all of this is that it has taken so long for donors to notice there is something seriously, alarmingly amiss at modern American universities. Scroll down a little bit more because I want to read this last part. Even putting aside the current Israel-Palestine controversy, academia has, over the past several decades, undergone a profound transformation from a classical institution of learning to a laboratory for all manner of woke political activism and extremism. And here's what needs to be understood. Christian mentioned that I said, and I kind of hesitated on whether or not I was going to bring this up, on whether or not he mentioned that I said I could see us having another Holocaust within our lifetime. And that's going to be the controversial thing that gets this episode demonetized. But I think it needs to be said. Why do I say that? Do I think it's going to look the same way the last one looked? Not necessarily. But when I see the number of protests taking place in the West, and when I see academia who, if you misgender someone at Harvard, if you dead name someone at Princeton, you're going to get in trouble for it. There's not going to be any question. Have they asked any of these questions on, are you allowed to talk about the genocide of, whatever protected class? The answer would have immediately been absolutely not. Our university, through our DEI program, takes every opportunity that we possibly can to ensure an environment where everyone feels safe. But when they asked, do you consider it a violation of your student policy to call for the genocide of Jews? They sat there and went through a bunch of legalese. Now, part of the reason why they're doing this is because there's serious questions with respect to differentiation between Zionism and anti-Semitism, or being anti-Zionist or anti-Semitic. And I get it. There can be distinctions there. The problem is that we're way past that. We're not talking about students saying, I want an independent Palestinian state, or students saying, I don't like the Israeli government. We're talking about rally after rally where they're saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. There's only one thing that can mean, and that is the destruction of the Jewish state. Now, they will argue that, well, we're not saying that the Jewish people need to be killed. We're just saying that the Jewish state should not exist in the Levant. Well, the question is okay, where should it exist? Because that's the only place that makes historical sense. And oh, by the way, the same people that are claiming that Israel is an apartheid state or a genocide state, if you're going to use the reasoning that these protesters do in order to come to that conclusion, then you would have to come to the conclusion that just about every Arab Muslim state is therefore an apartheid and genocide state when it comes to their treatment of Jews living with their own borders. So if anybody is wondering why this is such a problem, and I had a good friend in politics make a comment on Twitter where I messaged him and I said, I'm going to be honest, I love you, man, but I can't believe you said that. Because when I'm watching people that in all other respects seem to be fairly logical, that are essentially saying, we don't need to worry about any of this, it's none of our business. Now, am I saying that the United States should go to war to support Israel? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the United States has a legal or constitutional obligation to do any of that. I'm not. But I do think that Israel has a right to exist as a nation state. And I'm watching lines be blurred now that are pretty dangerous. And people will look at this and be like, well, Nick, you're getting caught up in an argument that has nothing to do with the United States. No, hear me out, because this part is important. Israel is just a catalyst for something that is far bigger that is going on right now within Western academia. And the reason why Israel is at the forefront of this overall discussion about wokeness, about critical theory, about this idea of oppressor and oppressed, is because people are still alive who went through the Holocaust. Right? The whole never again, never again, never again. We would never allow something like that to happen. Well, it didn't happen by accident. It happened because certain conditions were there, and then a catalyst was made available to allow the Nazi regime to get away with it. But prior to that, there had been pogroms against the Jewish people all over the country. There had been active and systemic discrimination against Jews. And I realize the Jews are not the only people that have been discriminated against, but an attempt for systematic annihilation, that was pretty unique. There's been other people that have gone through that, but that was pretty unique in world history. The degree and the scope with which it took place. And what I find fascinating is that a bunch of Western elites and academics who typically you would expect to look at a situation like this and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe after happened on October 7th, that was horrible, that was horrific. But instead, you had college professors getting up saying, this is what decolonization looks like. You notice it wasn't just Free Palestine. It was, this is what decolonization looks like. That is straight out of critical theory. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. You think the Israelis are the only ones that these people see as colonizers? You think that's it? You think it stops there? You think if Palestine was free from the river to the sea, which again is a direct call for the destruction of the Jewish state, if you think that was accomplished, do you think it would stop there? Do you think that's the only oppressor they're after? I can promise you it isn't. And the fact that this has manifested itself around this issue should be something that Americans look at a lot more seriously. Regardless of what you feel about the current government in Israel, regardless of what you feel about whether or not the United States military or the United States taxpayer should be on the hook to support Israel, regardless of what you think about that, I want you to look at the rhetoric coming out of these protests. I want you to look at the rhetoric coming out of Western academia. I want you to look at the rhetoric coming out of college professors and deans and presidents of Ivy League universities and their complete unwillingness to address what's going on within their college campuses. What you saw in that testimony was admission from the presidents of some of the most prestigious universities in the United States, essentially saying that when it came to certain groups that fall within the oppressor category, the same rules don't apply. Because they're oppressors, of course. They didn't come out and say that. Nope. They gave you a big runaround and a bunch of legalese on why, well, in this particular situation, because of the political nuance, and really, do you think they would have given you that runaround if somebody had said it about any other group, which technically falls within the oppressed class or the marginalized class or the minority class? Would they have said it? Would they have beat around the bush? Would they have given you a long explanation which no one could quite understand what it actually means? No, they wouldn't have done any of that. And what you need to understand is they won't do it for you either. What's happening on our university campuses is not just expensive. It's not just politically motivated. It's not just ridiculous. What's going on within our university campuses right now is dangerous. Because this whole idea that I should be able to use political violence against the people I don't like because they're evil and I'm good. They're an oppressor and I'm oppressed. That idea is catching on. That idea is catching on among an ever-increasing portion of the student body. And it is having an influence on the way that they process reality. And it is having an influence on what they think is acceptable behavior. I've said this once and I'll say it again. When they say you disagreeing with them on trans ideology is you engaging in violence against them, they're not just saying that to shut you up. They're saying it to be able to provide them moral grounds for using violence against you. That is where this ideology leads. That is where critical theory leads. And it is the dominant underlying philosophy of a lot of what is going on within our college campuses right now. And you are paying for it. I don't mean as a student. I don't mean as a donor. I don't even mean as a parent. You're paying for it as a taxpayer. And the few people that are going to get up, whether it be in Virginia during the legislative session, whether it be in Congress, and say, enough is enough. We're not going to subsidize the destruction of our own civilization on institutions of higher education that can't come out and say, yeah, you're not allowed to preach genocide against a particular people group. We're not doing it anymore. We're not subsidizing it. And the moment you say you're not going to subsidize it with tax dollars anymore, you know what they're going to say? They're going to say, oh, you're trying to ban free speech. Isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing how when we want to say something they don't like, they are perfectly fine with banning our speech? When we don't want to pay for something they want to say, that's when we're banning speech against them. Isn't that an interesting distinction? And it's because they are trying to create moral equivalency. That is what all this is about, creating moral equivalency so that eventually you can first be ostracized, then you can be fired, then you can be jailed, and I think you can conclude what happens after that. Because you're either going to get on board or you're going to be punished. And that is the sort of mindset that is being fostered in a lot of college courses all over this country. And again, you're forced to pay for it. And if you're not asking your legislator how they vote on these budgets, how they look at these budget amendments, if you're not asking them whether or not they're going to pull back and they're going to stand up and they're actually going to say, no more, not on my dime. If the universities would like to use their $50 billion endowment, well, then they can leave that between them and their donors. If they want to raise tuition, good. They can leave that between them and the students. But no more taking money by force through taxes in order to fund educational institutions who at best are increasingly providing shoddy degrees which can't pay for themselves. And at worst, fostering an ideology within our students which is increasingly convincing them that violence is the appropriate way for them to solve problems as long as they're attacking someone they've identified as a, quote, oppressor. And you can be an oppressor by something as simple as your skin color. So, what can we do about it? Well, politically, I've already given you a suggestion, and that is start calling your local representatives and telling them that you expect them to stand up against this, that you're no longer willing to put up with just this idea and this mindset that as long as it's for, quote, higher education, well, then, of course, take more of my money. Tell them you want to see results. Tell them that you want to see pushback against some of these radical ideologies. And again, I am fine with freedom of speech. You want to go speak free? Go speak freely. But it's amazing to me that the same people that will tell us that we are to be punished and ostracized if we say something they don't like find it ridiculous and absurd and oppressive if we don't want to pay for them to tell everybody that we're oppressors. Let me get this straight. I have to pay for the privilege of you turning my children against me? I don't think so. That doesn't happen anymore. And you need to demand that of your legislators. You need to demand that of your representatives. Because in no other situation do you see this. We don't carry bills. For instance, I'm very pro Second Amendment. I don't carry bills to give tax dollars to the NRA. Why? Because it's not appropriate. I don't carry bills to give tax dollars to the Heritage Foundation or to Cato Institute. Why? Because it's not appropriate. And I'm tired of being told that I have to give tax dollars to organizations which have become so ideologically captured and that are actively working against things that I believe and care about. The other thing that you can do, and this part I think is really important, if you're a business owner, stop giving deference to somebody simply because they have a degree. Now, don't get me wrong. If they went to a good school and they are a great student and they have proven that they can do that job, fine. But this idea that we are increasingly being told that, no, you got to hire, you got to have that degree, you got to have that degree. Education has become easier, not harder. And here's how I know. I have received far more education on my own from going to the litany of free resources that are now available in order to be able to study things, in order to be able to watch people actually doing things, in order to be able to get valuable capabilities and skill sets from people that are not telling me they know how to do it, people that either have done it or are currently doing it and showing me how to do it. Education has become easier, not harder. Education has only become harder and more expensive in one place, the university system and any sort of educational institution that the government controls. The amount of things you can learn on the Khan Academy for next to nothing is incredible. The amount of things you can learn on Skillshare, the amount of things you can learn just going on YouTube and looking up people and doing a very, very basic check for the sort of reviews and seeing whether or not this person actually knows what they're talking about. And to learn from that is absolutely incredible. It has never been easier or cheaper to gain more knowledge. Now, is there a lot of bad information out there as well? Absolutely. And you know what? A lot of it comes from the university. So I'm sick of hearing that they're the ones that are supposed to be the vetting process for what information is good or bad. The vetting process for information is, does it work? Does it reflect reality? Do I now have a skill set from having attended this course or watching this video or not? So start to, from the business perspective, start to reward people with capabilities and experience. If you're a parent, I know that there's an enormous amount of pressure to be able to tell people my kids are going to this university or my kids are going to that university. There's an enormous amount of pressure. I know there is. And I'm not telling you to not help your kids go to university if that's what they actually need to do for their career set or if it's something that they really want to do. I am telling you to be very, very careful about what you pay for at the university that they're going to. You can't just assume that it's going to be okay. And you need to be properly equipping your kids to be able to go into that environment so they don't come out the other end thinking that everything that you taught them just puts them in an oppressor category. They have to be able to go into that intellectually aware and capable of being able to defend the things, know what they believe, defend it, and be able to defend it academically and intellectually. But ultimately what this is about is just, we need to stop assuming. We need to stop assuming that it's just going to be okay if we send our kids off to college. We've done our bit. And now they're going off to college and everything's going to be okay because they'll have that degree. Because the bottom line is that you might be putting your student into a situation that is highly detrimental for them. That is going to be confusing, that is going to cause them to not question everything in a good and positive way where they're engaging in rigorous critical thinking, but rather questioning everything that they ever thought they knew about their identity. Not based off of facts or evidence, but based off of consensus within an ideologically captured institution. So I would just encourage you to avail yourself, because more and more we're seeing within the private sector, we're seeing within the marketplace, more and more companies coming back and going, I'm not doing this anymore. The old method, the old processes don't work. I need people who are skilled and competent with good work ethic. And if that comes with a degree, great. And if it doesn't, I don't really care anymore.
Nope.
Because even if they come with competence, it may be the thing that they're most competent in being is an activist. And a competent activist within your workplace can do more damage within your business than any of your free market competition can.
Good point.
And it's important to keep that into consideration because that's the world we're occupying now. So let me wrap this up. Did you have a...
I just wanted to make one point.
Yeah.
You know, you said something about parents taking pride in where their kids are going to go to school. I want to point out that the pride that if you're a parent with a child that's about to go to college, the pride that you have in where they go to school and what it means to tell your friends and family that they're going to school at X place isn't going to mean anything to your student 10 years from now when they realize they lack the skills they need to level up in their career. And in 10 years, where they went to school doesn't really matter to them because at that point they have to put food on the table. They have to build the competence, whether they got it in college or not. And I think a lot of that pride that parents have in where their kids go to school can, like you said, Nick, be very detrimental a lot of times.
It's not going to matter to you as a parent to brag about where your kid went to school if the reason why you can't visit them on Christmas is because of what they learned in that university.
You said that a lot better than I did. Last point here. Obviously, we've had some technical difficulties, folks. I apologize for that. We've had power issues and internet issues and computer issues today, and we've had to separate the streams a little bit. We got a lot of super chats in the previous stream that unfortunately I cannot see at this point to read off and answer. I tried to go back to see if we could find them. I wasn't able to. So want to say thank you to everyone who did send a super chat in the last stream, and we appreciate it. Sorry we can't address them during this stream.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I will say as we're moving to the conclusion here that this is probably a topic that we're going to bring up more in the future, I imagine, because in some ways we've only actually scratched the surface of the crisis that is, gripping higher education right now. Nick, you said that. I thought that you were pointing to.
Oh, no, it was Darth Looper said, do you have any examples of a university teaching a subject that is inherently untrue? I have examples of universities teaching subjects where they say there is no truth. So the fact that you're even bringing up truth as an example or as a standard for what should be taught in a university, I find fascinating because universities don't seem to agree with that. And it's not that activist is a bad word. It's the sort of activism that you're engaging in. And I will tell you this much. If you're going into a job and you're paid to do a particular job, yes, if they're doing something violent and horrible and exploitive, sure, that could be a good call for an activist to step up and do something. But that's not what we're seeing in a lot of these instances. What we're seeing is somebody coming in with this idea that, again, with this new standard of equity, which generally ends up translating into equality of outcomes, and then working to destroy, sue, or subvert the very organizations, the very practices which made the company successful in the first place and provided people thousands of jobs. So that's what I'm talking about. All right, listen, I know we've been on here for a while, and again, a lot of technical difficulties, so I apologize for that. There's some of that we control and a lot of it that we don't. We certainly don't control when the power goes out. So I appreciate Hamilton trying to get everything up on board.
That threw us off a little bit, but you know what? I think that you had some really good monologues here in this episode, and you're speaking as a legislator, right? I really do think that it's time for conservatives to start speaking out to their elected officials and being like, why are we funding the opposition? You want to know why we lose over and over and over again? Because Javier Milei actually said this best when he was running for president in Argentina. And he said, the only way that we win is if we force them into a fair fight.
Yep.
It is not a fair fight when we are funding our political opponents, not even just our political opponents, our ideological opponents. We're funding them. We're giving them free money taken from us, from conservatives, from people that live in conservative districts, Republican office holders.
Working people.
Yeah. Republican politicians vote to forcefully confiscate money from their conservative constituents, hardworking, some of them blue-collar constituents that didn't even go to college. They're voting to confiscate their money and give it to universities, state-funded universities. That what do? Do they churn out more, red, white, and blue patriotic Americans that believe in free markets and individual liberty and believe in some sort of social norms that don't lead us into the zombie apocalypse? No, they're churning out the exact opposite. They're churning out a bunch of woke idiots who can't do any sort of critical thinking, believe that Western civilization is evil and needs to be torn down, and have this black and white oppressor versus oppressive mentality that, quite frankly, leads you straight to genocide. We're voting to give them money to indoctrinate people into becoming cultural Marxists, and then we're wondering why on earth our country's going to hell. That's the reason why, because we're not in a fair fight. If it was an actual fair fight, here's what would be happening. We would be shutting off the flow of taxpayer money to universities and saying, great, if you want to have a private university, go ahead and do that. But you should not be able to compel my constituents to fund your ideology being propagated throughout the masses. Why on earth are we funding the cathedral? It's bad enough that it exists in the first place. It's even worse that it's being subsidized with taxpayer money.
Yeah.
Name me one instance where the left compels their base to fork over money for the propagation of conservative values. Is there any? I can't think of how much money do Students for Life get.
They might argue the military.
But even the military, I mean, let's be honest, even the military doesn't necessarily push conservative values.
Oh, no. In fact, increasingly it's becoming the opposite. But no, I think, and I did think when he said that was one of the best ways to summarize what I'm looking for here. I'm not looking for people to turn the tables in such a way where it's like, okay, fine, then we're going to control the political mechanisms of power, and we're going to steal liberals' money, and we're going to give it to those sort of educational and activist organizations which are in line with us. I don't want to do that. I want you to be able to spend your money the way that you want. I want you to be able to make the decisions that you want to be able to make, and I want you to deal with the consequences of your actions. And if you want help because you made a mistake, I don't mind you asking. I have a real problem with you demanding through elected officials and then telling me I'm mean if I don't want to hand it over to you. Because I think at that point, what we do is we're actually incentivizing a whole host of really, really bad decisions long term. And that's part of what's gone on within academia right now. They are protected from market forces because they can take your money through the officials that you elect. That's what it comes down to. They don't got to ask you for your money. They can take it. And it's about time we told them that if they're going to go ahead and turn their institutions into ideological hotbeds where they are essentially crapping on half the country, well, they can do it without our money. And I think that's a pretty fair position to take.
Can I make one more announcement?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
No, go for it.
Okay. Earlier, when we were streaming at 12, we actually had our 1,000th order come through to the store.
Oh, wow.
Which is awesome.
That is.
Today is the cutoff for any packages any orders that are submitted today will arrive by Christmas. Now, if you are listening to the stream right now or listening on audio, and you put in an order before 11:59 p.m. tonight and put MTA in the note section when you order, we will make sure and verify that your order gets shipped out tomorrow. So you can go to shop.nickjfreitas.com or treadaroundandfindout.com, submit an order, put MTA in the note section, and I'll make sure that our warehouse manager sees those and gets those shipped out in time to arrive by Christmas.
Yeah, we're actually, we love the group that we're working with on this. It's actually a localized group. That way we can have good interaction with the warehouse manager, with the screen printers, with all of that. We did that on purpose because we wanted to make sure that if we got into this and we were actually, providing products, that they would be good products and they would get you on time. And so we really are trying to do our best to make sure that happens. And we really appreciate everyone that has ordered.
Yeah, and for anybody who's put in an order to the store and it hasn't shipped yet, the challenge that we've had is actually purchasing the correct styrofoam containers for the mugs so that they don't break during shipping. And so there was actually an order of 1,900 styrofoam packages that arrived at the warehouse just a few hours ago. And so if your order is behind and hasn't shipped yet, they're going to be shipping out today and tomorrow. But we're, again, just so appreciative of everybody that has purchased from us, that are going to be repping the Tread Around and Find Out merchandise and that logo. And so thank you to everyone.
All right. Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us. We're very happy to have Christian back. I'm so happy that on Christian's return from receiving his master's degree in history, we could dedicate an entire episode to going after higher ed. But don't worry, higher ed. We're sending him. We keep sending him to infiltrate you to learn more. But no, listen. Hey, I just to sum up. Once again, the problem is not the idea of higher education or the idea of a university system or the idea of intellectualism. I want to reject anybody that seems to think that's the problem. The problem is the sort of capture that we see going on right now, and a lot of it has to do with government interference into this. Like I said, when you actually have organizations and institutions which get to provide products and services in the marketplace, and people get to choose whether or not they want to use them based off of voluntary cooperation and mutual benefit, that's fine. I'm not trying to ban anybody from saying the things that they want to say, but I got a real problem when you're forcing me to subsidize it, especially when I think it's overall detrimental to the country, to the economy, and to a lot of the things that we believe and hold dear. So once again, thank you very much for joining this episode. Thank you to Good Ranchers. Again, go to goodranchers.com, type in promo code Nick. You sign up for one of the subscriptions, you're going to get a really good ham for free with your subscription. So go ahead and consider doing all of that because, again, Christmas is coming up. We still got New Year's Eve. We got all that stuff that you might want a really huge, delicious ham with, and Good Ranchers is going to deliver. So once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next episode.